That's a decent segue into predictions for coaching or coaching-esque stuff for 2025.
Yeah.
So Sass had this amazing Instagram post that we can kind of start with there. And then Leanne and I were both really inspired by that to think about, what are the predictions that we have for the coaching industry based on that. So Sass, do you want to hit us with the highlights of your
Yeah.
Well, and
post?
can I just also recommend that
Yeah.
maybe people also, I think they could go back and listen to our episode about the future of coaching too, because I think this is a nice follow-up to that episode. I think it's going
Yes.
to be. Maybe it's not going to be, but I think I
Yeah.
love what Sass wrote on Instagram. It's so brilliantly articulated, and I just think,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
So go back, and Sass is going to give us the rundown on her post, and then
So
we'll go from there, just from memory.
I love that you enjoyed it. And I just want to say, do you know what inspired this post? Is I was without internet for 3 days, and because we've just moved house, and I had some
Right.
really, and we just some, technical issues that meant we had no
Yeah.
internet. So I was like just thinking about things while I was unpacking
Mm-hmm.
boxes. And
Mm-hmm.
what I was thinking about was our conversation about it. This was sparked by two things. One, I read a report. I know this makes me sound really exciting, but I read this report from Deloitte, which was
Mm-hmm.
about marketing trends and suggested that there'd been this real upswing in people spending on experiences rather than products. And they were putting
Mm-hmm.
that down to it's particularly in folks under 35, like that upcoming generations are making different choices about what they invest in. And I read that report and it reminded me of that Future of Coaching episode that we recorded and talking about how, we're seeing that like experiences over things is
Right. Yeah.
definitely a thing. And I was thinking, yeah, I'm really seeing that. I wonder if there's other research around this. And I found that McKinsey, MasterCard, and Deloitte have all found very similar trends using different research methods, which always, for me, that's like, oh, that's pretty substantive. That's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm predicting that we will see more and more and more of this, particularly as the climate emergency becomes, the poly crisis that we're seeing across the world. I think more and more of us are seeing that we don't need more stuff and the
Mm-hmm.
stuff does not go away and it has consequences, that if we're going to invest in something, we want it to be something that is in alignment with values, that actually feeds our spirit rather than our homes, fills our homes with stuff. So I think that's a really
Mm-hmm.
key thing for us as coaches to remember. We provide pretty much carbon neutral offers, really valuable, helpful experiences. We have these delicious conversations with folks. That is really valuable to people. And I think we can get a bit caught up in the whole coaching kind of conversations that we might see out there. And, don't ever forget that our work is really helpful and valuable and people want to pay for it. They want to invest in it. And more people are wanting to invest in these experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
I think
that's
that's a really key prediction.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you had
Yeah.
5 predictions. So that was
Yeah.
the first one
Yeah.
where you talked about
Um,
the, do you remember? Do you want me to remind you of what
Yeah,
some of the
just
other ones were?
hit the
Or?
highlights, Leanne, since you have it there.
Yeah,
Or
please
do you?
remind me. I know there was a lot about
Yeah.
the nature of coaching.
Yeah, I mean it totally is. But that's I sort of think of that one maybe as one of the foundational ones too.
Mm.
Yeah. So
So,
that first one is such a good one about, yeah,
yeah,
the shift from consumption to connection. And to what
yeah,
did you say? You
yeah,
said a deep hunger for the experience of human connection. And I think of it
yeah,
also as I think people wanting to be more than consumers, right?
yeah,
And wanting to
completely. Yeah.
become more of a becoming than a just consuming, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
coaching really, really speaks to becoming, to becoming a, full
Yeah,
expression of who you are
yeah,
versus just consuming more and more stuff. So that was number
yeah.
one. Do you want to just go through them, Sass, or do you remember them?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the other thing that I was thinking about was because I'd been listening to a podcast about, panic stations around AI. And I have had a few
About,
conversations
sorry,
with
what did you say?
about AI, like
No,
panicking,
what was
Panics.
people
the
panicking, panic
oh,
Oh,
stations.
panicking.
oh, I
Yeah,
wasn't
Panic
familiar
panic
with the
stations.
stations.
term panic
Yeah, like
stations. Oh,
everybody goes to the
panic
panic
station.
station because
Okay.
yeah, I think
Oh,
that might be a
okay.
Star
Okay.
Trek reference. Apologies.
All right.
Yeah, but yeah, AI is creating like some real discomfort, and what will it mean for our industry? And honestly,
Uh-huh.
I'm so not worried about it.
No, me either.
Agree.
Yeah.
And I don't want us as a collective group of thoughtful coaches to give it any attention. I predict, and I don't know, I genuinely believe this. I think we are all getting better and better at spotting AI. You already know what it looks like when you see
Oh.
an AI image. You're going to get better and better at seeing what it looks like in word form and in voice form.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we do that, we're going to give it the job of, really exciting, thrilling stuff like figuring out big data projects and how we might cure illnesses and reduce suffering and all of that good stuff. We don't need AI writing scripts, and we certainly do not need it involved in any kind of talking therapy because it
Mm-hmm.
does not have empathy and it
Yeah.
does not give one shit about client outcomes. It
Yeah.
has no place in this. So we can't give it any energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. So that, I mean, that, the old saying of like, I can't give you an exact definition of pornography, but I know it when I see it, I think is how it went.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what that reminds me of. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
authenticity. You can't
Yeah.
exactly tell somebody like but
You
something
can
is
smell it.
inauthentic. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess the other predictions that I had from memory were really much more about like the nature of this relationship that we have with clients. Like I think as more and more of us recognize that, and all the research points to this, that it's actually the client coach relationship that really matters. Like that is modeling safety and trust and the ability to be ourselves and to figure out who we're going to become as clients.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is regardless of what methods or tools you use, how that relationship rolls out, that is the thing that actually really matters. And so I honestly think
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to see more and more of us pay attention to, the mentoring over the marketing, the supervision over the
Mm-hmm.
sales, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
ethos of the practice of holding space, what that actually involves, that the art of that is it's not it's nuanced, it's complex. And for a lot of us, it feels like coming home. Feels like the
Mm-hmm.
thing we've been doing our whole
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. You didn't I actually can't even find anything about AI on your list, but yeah, no. So you used this term when you were talking about that, about embracing supervision, T-shaped expertise, which like totally goes right
Yeah.
over my head. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
And I read the whole
Yeah.
thing and I still don't know what it means. What is
Yeah.
T-shaped expertise?
So that's so if you think about the letter T, right, there's a bar
Mm-hmm.
across the top and then a long thing in the middle, right? So
Yeah, sure.
T-shaped expertise, and I think it comes from the tech industry actually. So I've probably got it from my husband. T-shaped expertise is that you have depth in one area, right? So that the long
Yeah.
part of the T, you have depth in one area. So that's kind of like your particular flavor of coaching, like the
Mm-hmm.
aspect
Mm-hmm.
of this work that fascinates you.
Yeah.
And then across the top, you have more kind of broader capabilities and coaching capabilities.
Mm.
And so what I think this leads to is a maturing of us as coaches is that often we'll start with kind of T-shaped expertise, right? We'll come to the industry
Uh,
from marketing or from,
right.
research and self-doubt, as a couple of examples, right? But we get these broader capabilities. And I think what ends up happening as you mature as a coach is that you end up coaching the whole person. So you might have a
Yeah.
client who's coming to you because they're having a tricky time at work and they want to resolve the way that they're showing up there.
Mm-hmm.
As you're modeling that relationship of trust and safety, they're gonna talk to you about whatever
Hmm.
is important, right? So you
Yeah.
end up coaching the whole person. Yes, we'll talk about that person at work, but we'll also talk about, well, where else is this pattern showing up, and what else is going on in that client's life. And the ability to hold a whole person, I think, is a
Hmm.
sign of that maturing. I think more and more of
Hmm.
us are seeing, like, it goes beyond tool-based approaches and, like, right, let's get your strategy sorted, and actually let's move
Hmm.
into, like, who are you in this,
Hmm.
rather than
Mhm.
what you're doing, who are you being? And I think there's more of a stretch in that for a lot of
Yeah.
coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that can, yeah, and that can be, I mean, that's maybe what I consider life coaching versus some other kind
yeah,
of coaching, right? And that is
totally.
definitely, I think, the kind of coaching the three of us do. Okay, T-shaped expertise. Good stuff. Love it. Okay,
So
I
Leanne,
love this one.
yeah, where were you jumping off on this?
Well, I
Like,
liked this one because I love this. The days of vibes-based coaching are coming to an end. And then Sass goes on to say, well, tell us what you meant by that, Sass. The
Yeah,
days of vibes-based coaching are coming to an end.
I think there's no doubt that the market there's a lot of coaches available. Like, if you want to get coached in anything, you can pretty much find someone on the first Google search. That is not going to be
Yeah.
a struggle. And this is one of the few industries where there is no barriers to entry. It's incredibly, like, the bar isn't even off the floor. Like, anyone can call
Hmm.
themselves a coach. No one's coming for you.
Yeah.
And I think as we have gone through and are continuing to go through what they call in the UK a cost of living crisis, but I think we're starting to see that, you know, discretionary income, which is what is used to invest in things like coaching, is
Hmm.
tighter. And so I think we're seeing a maturing of clients who are looking for,
Yeah.
someone with some, a bit of grounding, like some experience, some
Hmm.
evidence basis, perhaps, a proven experience, and an ability to actually help a person. I think that can only be a positive thing. And it
Hmm.
means that for us as practitioners, you know, I never say this is a not non-regulated industry. I say it's self-regulated. And so that means we need to take responsibility for ensuring that we are operating responsibly, right? That we kind of have an ethical frame, that we know where our scope of practice begins and ends, that
Hmm.
we give some thought to these things.
Hmm.
And it also means that you're much better placed, I think, to create a sustainable practice, one that supports you in whatever way that looks like, when you are, really thoughtful about your work. I think, just good vibes, lifestyle
Yeah.
coaching, the coach fluencers
Yeah.
that we started
Yeah.
this podcast talking about.
Yeah.
I just think their days are numbered.
Yeah. 100%. It reminds me of this Jenny Odell. Do you guys, I don't know if you know Jenny Odell, How to Do Nothing. She wrote a book, How to Do Nothing, and she's kind of an artist. And she wrote this article called There's No Such Thing as a Free Watch because she saw this
Mm,
thing ad for a free watch on Instagram. It's like free watch, $7 shipping. Anyway, she did this whole thing tracing this watch, which was just, the same exact watch was being, as we've seen over and over in this sort of this era of branding where it's all about
mm,
it's not the product is sold by many different brands, the exact same product, but they all just have their vibes, right? So it's like it's being
yes.
sold by for $100 over here because the vibe is preppy, whatever guy, and then over here it's being sold for, and so people are just getting drop shipping all these products from where, from Asia, and all
Yeah,
they're doing, you're buying the vibes rather than the actual product.
completely.
And this is what has happened. I think that thought that when I saw you write the vibes based coaching, that's what I thought too. There's a lot of just very basic kind of technique or something for people who aren't really interested in the deeper practice of coaching or in human beings even. They're just not even that
Yeah,
interested in human beings. And
yeah,
it just becomes about vibes. And so
Yes.
it's like this watch, just like,
Yeah.
and the way I often think of this is there was, and I don't know if this is still a thing people do, and I apologize if I don't even know your websites well enough to know if you have this on your website, but I know you have more than this. But I think of like there's a thing that not just coaches, but lots of different people have on their website. It's like 10 things you might not know about me. And then it's like, I love Star Trek and or like these random kind of facts, which are supposed to endear them to us or make us, but to me, that's
Mm.
sort of almost part of the vibes thing. It's like, how is
Yes.
that
Yeah.
relevant to your work as a
Yeah.
coach?
Yeah.
I get the point of it is supposed to be connecting with your potential clients, but I'm like, I don't care if I don't care about that stuff with my other health
Yeah.
professionals. Why would I care about it with my
Well,
coach?
I can tell you exactly where that comes from.
Oh,
And
okay.
it comes from, well, I suspect for most of our audience, you'll recognize it as the know, like, and trust factor, which probably comes from Marie Forleo and B School and those kinds of things.
Oh,
But
interesting.
she learned it from a chap called Jeff Walker, who
Uh-huh.
had a product called, what was
Back
it?
to
The
him, hey?
launch something? The
Oh,
launch.
the launch
Launch
formula.
formula.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah. So,
Oh, I
and,
didn't know it was a
you know,
part of that.
this and both of them, and I think Marie Forleo learnt this from Jeff Walker, and he learnt it from various folks, is very much about how do you create often a digital product that people will want to buy. A key part of that is that your customers have to know you, like you, and trust you. And if
Uh-huh.
you look at the way they show up, it's very much like I could be your best friend. Like
Yes,
they're
yes.
both very affable, very
Right.
a lot of riz, right? A lot of charisma.
Right. That's what you wrote in the
That's
thing. I
what
love
Riz
that.
means,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, totally.
I'm down with the
Totally.
cool kids, hanging out
Yeah.
with my 19-year-old nephew. He's a great translator.
Well
Yes.
done.
But it's that
Yes.
thing, I think, of and that was a real thing, like 5, 10 years ago. They were both
Mm-hmm.
like very well
Yeah.
known, had very slick marketing
Yeah.
campaigns, making millions of dollars and
Mm-hmm.
showing people here is how you turn your not very well established expertise into looking like
Yeah.
expertise, right?
Yeah.
Owning your authority,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of, I mean, I don't know a coach who hasn't heard of either Marie or Jeff. I've bought the launch formula. I never did B school, but I bought the launch formula. It was so bloody complicated. I never implemented any of it. But
Well, yeah.
but it's that thing, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
affable. And I remember Kelly Deals, who is worth looking at in terms of just sound values-led marketing approaches.
Yeah.
I remember she wrote a post ages ago saying liking someone is a terrible reason to
Yeah.
invest in working with them.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was such good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, love that as a principle. Maybe we say moving the prediction is we move from vibes based coaching to values based coaching.
Yeah,
Something like
definitely.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like that. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. Love that.
Yeah, I just to jump in, I wrote down the fall, I said coach fluencers will crater and move into
Oh,
other
yes.
spaces. I think it's already happening. You see
Mm-hmm.
them talking about, what do they have some name for basically firing all their employees and, you know, going it alone, or they're just trying to move into other spaces because I just think there's not as much fuel for that fire anymore. It's,
Mm.
talk about consumption
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
overconsumption, or it's a fire that's burning itself out. It's not sustainable. And so I think we'll
Yeah.
see less of that. I predict, oh, I back to AI too. I did see in your post, you did say something about AI and you said it also forces us, and I had a client who's very involved in AI tell me this too, and it really resonated for me that what AI is doing is forcing us to confront and get clear about what it means to be human.
Mhm.
And I think
Mm.
that's really important. And, AI ultimately is a tool. I do give it some of my attention. I like technology and stuff. I'm not, I think there are problems with it. I know some people are just very against it. There's some places where it really helps me in my work in terms of
Mm.
understanding, like, large bits of information, especially on my
Mm.
consulting side, like what does this mean and how do I boil it down? And
Mm.
it's interesting because sometimes I have a hard time doing that.
Yeah.
And so I think
It's the discernment, isn't it? That's the
exactly,
key
it's the
part, right?
discernment and
Yeah.
how you want to use it. And no, it's not good for writing, but it's been great for me as a way to bounce off
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
and say
Mhm.
like, what
It's a
questions do you have
tool.
about this? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tool and it's
Yeah.
like really helped me with that.
Mhm.
So, but I agree, and I think some people will use AI for advice and counsel or whatever. And it's going to have limitations, just like
Yeah.
anything else. You're only going
Yeah.
to be able to get so
Yeah.
much from that relationship because of all the things that you said.
Yeah.
And I do think there are problems in terms of its impact on, the resources that it's using. So, we have a lot of that kind of stuff that we're grappling with. But I agree, that's the last thing that coaches have to be afraid of is, I think, AI coming in and eating your lunch. I do think that's where another thing, Sass, that you said that really resonated with me is there was something in there about self-paced programs.
Yeah.
Self-paced programs, and there were a couple other things, but you were saying they're essentially in a large scale group. So we're not
Mhm.
talking about small group, but we're talking about large scale group
Mhm.
experiences. And there were a couple other things in that vein. Oh, self-paced
Yeah.
study
And digital products.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
digital products and being ineffectual.
Yeah.
And so I ran digital product division for a publishing house for a while. And we used Jeff Walker's method, which I didn't love. And honestly, that's what we found. People
Yeah.
have a hard
Yeah.
time finishing. I think this company is struggling in that vein because
Yeah.
that's something where I do think AI can take over and just be like, okay,
Mhm.
what are the 10 steps to build a better
Mhm.
habit,
Yeah.
a better
Yeah.
morning habit? So it's if you just want that, if you just want the
Mm.
download and the information, you're not going to be able to compete. It is the aliveness that we bring.
Mm.
And it's like,
Mm.
even
Mhm.
if you're doing the 10 steps to create better habits, if you're showing up and helping people or helping people, I have a friend who it helps people through money, money issues, but it's all
Mm.
around embodiment and yoga nidra and like really connecting in. And she's so knowledgeable about what
Yeah.
she's doing. So of
Mhm.
course somebody could ask ChatGPT, like, help me
Yeah.
improve my money life. And they're going to say, make a budget and do this and do that. But if
Mhm.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like
yeah, if your
I've
body is frozen at the thought of it,
exactly. I've yet to meet a client who needed more information.
yeah.
Right? Like
Or
nobody needs
even,
more information. It's not
yeah.
about that. Otherwise we'd read a book and go, sweet, I'll make all the changes in that book that resonated. Job done. But
Yeah.
that's
And
not
Yeah.
even,
that's not how we learn. That's not how we change. It's not how we grow. Like,
Mhm.
there is no requirement for information. That's being democratized. It's available. What we need, I think, is to understand more of who we are in relationship to that information. What is
yes.
it in us that is either attracted to that and why, or is resistant to it and why? And what are the
Mhm.
changes we even want to make? All of that. I think
Yeah. And
our
even
clients need
even
more.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a client recently who was considering signing up for a program that cost $16,000. I think that, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And she said, but I just wanted to have a chat with you first before I did it. And of course, she already knew.
Mm,
She didn't do it because she knew that after our conversation she wasn't going to do it. But one of the things she said to me was, but I looked at all the testimonials and they all sound so amazing. And so I just wanted, like, in case this isn't obvious to people listening, I thought I'm just gonna let that is why those people signed up for that course, is because
Mm.
this woman has a platform of this many followers. And by doing her course, they get to give a testimonial. And now you went and looked them up. And so there, and that's one of the things she promises in the course is I will give you exposure to my millions of, or not millions, I don't know, thousands of followers. Maybe
Mm.
it's millions, I'm not even sure. And so there's, so you cannot trust even those testimonials, right? Like I said, go look at the people. And then, so she's like, yeah, yeah, you're right. Like she knew that too. She had a sense of it, but she just needed to kind of have it affirmed. But
Mm.
that's, so yeah, so though that I think those programs, people, as Sass said earlier, are becoming more in more critical consumers maybe of those kinds
Yeah.
of things that are out there, and they're realizing that even
Mm.
though there's so many great testimonials or whatever it is, like
Mm.
there's be really critical when you look at it. And I think people are being more critical, and those big things I think are not going to be the money grabs that they once were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Agree.
I
Agree.
agree. So a couple just quick predictions that I
Yeah.
have. I think it's already happening and there will continue to be large scale exodus from traditional social media, which
Yeah.
Hmm.
I would call Facebook, Instagram, X, uh,
Hmm.
Twitter.
Let's call
Twitter.
it
Yeah.
Twitter.
Yeah,
Let's
Twitter.
let's dead name that
Um,
thing.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's already happening and it's
Agree.
going to happen more. And also in terms of, I mean, Sass, you do a beautiful job marketing on Instagram, but I think it's challenging to try to break through and get
Yeah.
people's
Yeah.
attention.
And I've had
And
no growth in 2 years, like very little
yeah,
growth on Instagram.
yeah. So if you're at a place, so it's always an individual decision, but I absolutely think this is a larger trend, which is related to my next prediction, which is the social fabric is going to become more and more important. And
Yeah.
maybe this is a projection because this is like my latest obsession that I'm studying, but Leanne, you said something earlier that made me think of it too, as you said, so many women coach because this is the work that women have always done. And I think there is this piece about, I know most of the coaches that I know are community builders.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to be done there. Now, that may not necessarily be monetized, where some of it may be monetized, but some of it may not be monetized. Who knows? But
Mm.
I think this is a critical piece, and some of that will happen virtually, but because just the way we're connected, but some of it needs to happen in real life too.
Yes, I
And
had
I
that
think
written
it's
Totally.
down.
yeah, and I think it's moving beyond. This may be where coaches find themselves moving beyond. Another trend that I have that I think actually happens all the time is that coaches exit the strict coaching box,
Mm,
but then they take the sum total of their experiences and become something else. And I
Yeah.
think there would be more of that as people,
Yeah.
as the
mm,
industry, as it is, as everything we've been talking about gets really saturated, which forces people to actually
yeah.
innovate and back to planning, become more of who they actually are because they weren't meant to
Mm.
be that. Back to our previous, probably
Hmm.
number 1 episode where you're not meant to be in the coaching box even.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I think all of those trends are going to accelerate, but that, yeah, there's a role for us to play
Mm.
in
Mm.
helping people
Yeah.
come together and relate and tolerate and, whatever it is. And that can have 1,000 million different,
Repair.
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
So
repair
yeah, how I wrote
iterations.
it down, Bridget, was don't sleep on live local offerings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And
what
and
I'll be
I
doing next year too.
and I mean
Yeah.
I'm lucky because I have a mentor, Marlene, who that is her and has been her bread and butter for the whole,
Mm.
like, she's not on social media, has never been on social media. She's doing virtual events starting with COVID. She started doing them, so now she's got a couple that she still does. But she has made a living for, however, like years and years and years and years, just bringing together women in live local experiences and offerings. So yeah, so I think there is going to be a circling back to that and seeing the value of
Completely.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And that's the work that women have done for centuries.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Well, I want to, and to kind of maybe as an affirmation, do you guys all know about this new thing Soul Cycle has? Have you heard about it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so they're calling it Soul Cycle without the cycle. It's called peopling. They're getting
Oh,
people
wow.
together in
Way to
groups.
brand it.
They're getting people together in
Mm.
groups to have, to have these soulful conversations. Small
Gosh.
groups in person to have soulful conversations. So it's sort of like, yeah, okay, like if don't let Soul Cycle, monopolize that space. If that's something you
Yeah,
feel called to, get in there and take up some of that space for yourself.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Let's not
absolutely.
corporatize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Do you
yeah.
have to wear lycra to the peopling
Mhm.
events?
I don't think so. It sounds kind of creepy though from the
It
descript.
does.
I read somebody who went to one and kind of described the whole thing, and it's yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting
Yeah.
what's emerging out there. Yeah.
It's a
And
good
I just,
indication of where they think the money is, right?
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just wanted like a quick thing on the 10 things you want to know about me because it's such an internal check thing, because I'll tell you just a quick story. When I had my first website, I put like just a candid shot of me and my dog in the snow on the site. And my coach at the time, like, or a coach, like a mentor coach at the time, made fun of me for that, like that I wasn't supposed to
Oh,
have that. And
no,
so
why?
because it wasn't glitzy and glamorous or something, but I wanted people
Uh,
to
It wasn't
see
a pro
yeah,
headshot.
no, that's not what I'm
me
talking
and right,
about.
exactly. So I just wanted to be clear
Yeah, yeah,
that
no, that's good.
that that saying, who you are in this genuine way and a genuine desire to connect and be known and share the things that you're passionate
Mm,
about, that's not what we're talking about here.
No.
There is a whole, and you can feel the difference is that there is
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's actually important to paint the difference that there are people that are genuinely doing that, and then there are people that are playing on that to manipulate your emotions to get you to feel more connected to buy the product. So that's like the and even it's not that bad people do these things, right? The testimonials and stuff, people are just repeating what they've been taught.
Oh,
So
100%.
yeah, so I never want to, but this is a part of the discernment is if those testimonials are getting you all hopped up to drop 16 grand. And I just had a client the other day that almost did this too. If you're feeling, so notice how you feel.
mm,
Yeah,
That's how you can tell. If
yeah.
you are looking at somebody's website and they have a picture of their dog, or they say they like Star Trek, or they say what their astrological signs are, and you're like, oh, that's cute, that's sweet. And maybe they even have some people sharing, like, oh, this is what it's like to work with her. That's nice to know. But if you're
yeah,
reading this stuff and it's making you feel like I've got to be a part of this is the ticket, this is the answer, this is going to solve my problems. Know that you are being manipulated into feeling that way. And
yeah,
that's the difference that we're talking
yeah.
about here.
Great
And I
distinction,
would say,
Bridget.
if there is like a part of you that really wants to spend 16 grand, please, in all that is holy, have a conversation with that practitioner first and really do a gut check. Like, don't just drop it because you've got a buy now button. Actually, email them and say, can we have a chat about this? This is a big investment for me.
Yeah.
Because I think you can tell a lot more from a person when you're actually talking to them. Have good questions you want to ask, really pay attention to your gut, and then leave it for a few days.
Yes, that
And if
I
they
would
don't let
say,
you leave
Really,
it,
yeah,
they're going to give
yeah.
you, they're going to show you who they are, and you
yeah.
can trust yourself to know.
Yeah, go into
But
that. If you go into that call knowing that you're not going to give them a definitive answer on the call.
And
completely.
stick to
Yeah.
it. Think of your
Yeah.
OG coaches on your shoulder. And if they don't let you get off that call,
Yeah.
hang
Call
up,
us. Yeah.
hang up
And
and
call
call
us.
us.
We will we
Get
will
on
sort
the
you out.
get on the
Yeah.
emergency line, because
Yeah.
that is not what you
Yeah.
want to have. And look, if they can't be bothered to, you're going to drop
Yeah.
16 large. Look,
Yeah.
if somebody wants to spend 16 large with me, I will have multiple conversations with you. Like,
Oh my
I'm
God.
happy to chat with you,
I am so
you
happy to
know?
chat with someone who wants to buy a $30 workshop. Like,
Exactly.
I'm like, just email me if you've got
I
questions,
know. I'm
honey. We
like,
can
just
figure
Yeah.
this
tell me,
out.
just read my stuff and tell me what you think. My God, like
Exactly.
like we're
Yeah,
shouting into the
seriously.
void here, so that's the difference. And
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, so I think we've just created a little double episode for the end
I
of
know.
the
Yeah.
end of
I
the
love
year
it.
Oh,
here.
okay.
I
Well,
love
that
that.
does that mean
Yeah.
I have time to add one more prediction?
Oh, please.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay. So because Sass mentioned Substack and I'm doing the Substack, which, okay, so my hilarious story is I started a Substack without, and then I was really bummed because I wanted to use
Mm.
leanneraymond.substack.com and it was taken. And I was like, oh, shoot. These other Leanne Raymonds who I love, I know a couple of them, spell the name the same way as me. One of them got to it before I did, I figured. So I made this whole thing. Well, it turns out that it was me who made it
It
two
was
years
you.
ago. And I had forgotten all about
When
it.
the idea first emerged.
So anyway, but I think the Substack thing reminds me of two things that I think has two qualities of what we're doing. Being able to have a way of giving our community safety in their conversations by having it be a private kind of space instead of, like the old blogs where you would just leave comments and could get nasty comments or people could get attacked in the comments, whereas this is a very contained space. So I think Substack offers that.
Mhm.
And then it also, to me, has elements of what I loved about Twitter back in the day, which is
Mm.
able to have cross conversations with
Yeah.
people. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's also been missing, at least for me. And I love to see that coming back, where it's like I write about this and then I comment on you when you wrote about that. And there's
Completely.
this nice community kind of salon kind of energy is how
Mm.
I think of
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
also
another thing I see down the pipe.
yeah, completely,
Hmm.
completely, and it's also robot free. There are no algorithms on Substack, so
Yes.
I think
That's going to be another trend.
that is
Yes.
telling, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, I
Algorithm
think,
free
yeah.
social media is going to be another trend. Blue Sky, Substack,
Mm.
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the distributed web. I forget what the hell
Mm.
that's called.
Yeah. Yeah.
Metaverse or some goddamn thing. I don't know
Yeah.
what. That's
And I
out of
think
my purview.
And this is another reason why I think coaching has some appeal and some legs to it is because I think people are tired of being part of the algorithm and being
Yes.
talked to by the algorithm and shaped by the algorithm. So I think of it as a move from algorithm to agency.
Yeah.
So we go,
Love it.
Nice.
I like these little things, vibes to values, algorithm to agency, these kinds of like
Yeah.
just little catchy phrases of ways to talk about it. But I see that
Yeah.
that as
Yeah.
a really good sign for the future of coaching and what's ahead
Yeah,
for
And
coaching.
and
and you
for
know,
humanity at large, really, the algorithms.
completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, just a last point, this totally fits with the astrology, right? We're moving into the age of Aquarius. I know you're all going to laugh at me for my
No, I
No,
love
I
it.
love it.
I'm
I
here
astrology
for
love
it and
here.
I
it.
am into it.
But the age of Aquarius, it's all about collaboration, community, bottom-up change, innovation. Like I think, there's lots of, good
Hmm.
signs that,
Yeah.
yeah, we're moving into more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On our last call, I know I think I used this metaphor of being vaccinated by the like we got our first shot, but we had to get our second shot to get. And then I was thinking about that afterwards. I was like, no, you know what I think is a better metaphor around where we're at and what's happening is we've been kind of fed an overdose of antibiotics. And there
Mm.
is, and I thought of this because my friend just had to take a bunch of antibiotics, and now she's trying to like do her gut biome. You know how people
Yeah.
do that?
Mm,
They'll like eat
Yeah.
lots of fermented food. And so I was like, oh, yes, we've kind of lost the bacterial cultures, but in our case, it's like the human culture's energy. And we have to, we are part of the repopulating of those
yeah,
cultural things that then actually make for a healthy
yeah,
community and
yeah,
culture and space, right? So think of
yeah.
yourself as a little bit of yogurt, is what I'm saying.
Well, and
I love it.
I think there's going to be a time when there's going to be a lot of hot gas in the
Yeah.
meantime.
I love it.
So
We could take
I think
this
it's apt.
analogy so far. Yeah.
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 All right, you
But
two.
I would say
Oh,
as well, like just as a final point, it feels to me like we're all feeling quite hopeful.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I am definitely trending better,
Yeah.
and just really taking care of my nervous system. And I think there is a lot to be hopeful about, and a lot that we just don't know. And so why,
Mm,
why
mm,
tank ourselves in
Yeah.
advance of anything happening. But I believe in people, and I'm looking for the
yeah.
bright spots, and I hear
Yeah.
little stories and little places where people are trying to be more tolerant, and in all
Yeah.
kinds of
Mm-hmm.
people. And
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do think those things are happening,
Yeah.
and I want to believe that that's what most people want, even if we don't all
Yeah.
agree.
Oh,
Like,
100%.
most people
Well,
just want to live and, have a
yeah.
livelihood and feel safe, and all those things that humans want. And so the more that we can come together and know each other, the more clear that becomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Rebecca Solnit writes really well about that too,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
reading an interview, kind of a conversation between two female women science fiction writers, and they were saying that think about what future you're imagining, and if
Yeah.
they've been saying like there's an outbreak. I love how they called it an outbreak. There's an outbreak of dystopia, and it's up, and it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Yeah.
and so
We want the
to
utopia.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like let yourself dream into something better. Not in the sense of you're going to be able to necessarily manifest it, but
Mm.
that energy is going to be more important for you and for what
Yeah.
what is able to
Yeah.
come forth
Yeah.
than just staying in a
Yeah.
dystopic state the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember John Lewis talking about this, the black civil rights activist, and he said in an interview, I think it was on, I don't know where it was, but I remember him talking before he died about how even though the civil rights movement didn't make as many of the changes that they were hoping for, they made some, and the way that the community that came out of that movement lived into what they were imagined for
Hmm.
everyone. And I do
Hmm.
think, that's the reason I would go on a march, is not to make a change, but to be surrounded by people who care about the same stuff as me.
Yeah.
That's why I would
Yeah.
protest. That's why I would be with someone. So I think that hope and that imagining a new future, it's like, don't do it because you want it to happen straight away. Like, do it because of how it feels in this moment,
Hmm.
the
Well,
support
Hmm.
and
it gives you now.
that's your flaming arrow.
Yes.
Your hope is your flaming arrow into this future. So,
Mm.
Beautiful.
all right,
Nice
friends.
ending, Bridge.
Hey, all
So
right.
we'll make this into 2 episodes, and we'll release them one after the other, and we'll see everybody next year.
Yeah. See you next year, everyone. Thanks for listening.